Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Newberry Library. We've got a lovely, lovely group here, small but mighty. My name is Allison Hinderleiter. I'm the curator of modern manuscripts here at the Newberry Library. I work with the Chicago dance collections here at the Newberry. I am not a dancer, but I've learned a lot about dance history since I've started working here over 20 years ago. And the Newberry has over 90 collections devoted to Chicago dance, and that's dancers, choreographers, companies, critics, photographers, dance organizations like See Chicago Dance, we're just so pleased to be hosting this panel discussion to celebrate Joel Hall Dancers and Company 50th anniversary. We have a wonderful panel up here, and I'm going to give them all the time to talk, so I'm going to stop talking in a minute or two. I wanted to introduce our moderator, who will be introducing our speakers, and our moderator is Chicago Dance History Embodied, I believe, and we just started talking, and she named so many companies and so many teachers throughout her career. So I will let you read her full biography, but I will say that she is a Chicago-based choreographer, teaching artist, and a native of Chicago's West Side, and an assistant professor at Northern Illinois University. And please join me in welcoming Sarita Smith Childs. And Sarita will introduce our other speakers, so I'll leave her to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you so much for coming out on this beautiful Saturday afternoon to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Joel Hall Dancers as we kick this off. With us today, we are going to have a conversation. The time is way too short to really get everything we want covered here, but today I want to have a conversation with three legacies, three artistic directors and founders of companies at various stages of their lifespan. And so we have Vershawn Sanders-Ward, artistic director of Red Clay Dance. Red Clay has just finished their 15th anniversary season, and so this is their Sweet 16 coming up, and so it's a great way, this is also a great way to kick off their 16th season. We have Winifred Haun, who is the founder and artistic director of Winifred Haun and Dancers, as well as Third Coast Contemporary. And that is a trainee company model that she has actually, this is the second season, starting the second season of that. But she has completed her 25th anniversary season. So this is year 26 for Winifred Haun and Dancers. And then there are no words to introduce this man over here. He is true Chicago dance history, Chicago jazz history, urban jazz history, and he just means the world to me, and it is just an honor to be here to have this conversation, starting their 50th season. And so Joel Hall. And it's incredible to see some of the dancers, and we're going to talk about legacy, how their companies formed. We're going to get just a picture of their early years, how they formed as artists and as humans, and then how they formed their companies, and then the many transitions. I also want to leave some time so we can delve into really an important topic that affects all of us, which is artivism and social justice And without further ado, I'm going to go down the line and have them introduce themselves in terms of where they came from. So just, Vershawn, if you can start.
Here we go. All right. Okay. See, green light. That means go. So good afternoon. My name is Vershawn Sanders-Ward, and I'm. So we have a way that we practice at Red Clay with the I Come From, and I want to just again thinking about legacy and lineage. I learned this practice during my time studying with urban bushwomen. Who's directed by Jawale Zolar in New York. So I come from gumbo. I come from cornbread. I come from the Mobile Bay. I come from red clay dirt in the South. And I come from a family of educators and creatives and activists. Here in Chicago, I come from the South Side and South suburbs and spent time mostly, I would say, pursuing sports and athleticism and wanting to do all the things that my dad was doing until I realized that that probably was not going to get me where I wanted to be in life. And so I started in dance at about the age of, seriously, I would say 8 or 9 years old. And I would, beg my mother to let me take the train to Joel's because I wasn't on the north side. I wasn't a north sider, so it was a constant battle to get her to let me get on the train and take class at Joel's Space. But I guess what I feel most rooted in that I come from is this idea of understanding lineage and legacy and using that as a platform to activate my voice. And so through my time as a young artist, even in high school, then Columbia and at Tisch, I was always looking for the purpose of my work. Like what did I want to do with my art making, with my dance making? What kind of impact did I want it to have on the world? And it was never about, Vershawn's legacy living on. That wasn't which is why the company is not Vershawn Sanders-Ward Dance Company. I wanted something that was tied to my lineage, but also spoke about the purpose and the reason why we wanted to make dance and why we wanted to put art into the world. And so that was always important to me. It was a bigger picture. And I always foresaw the company going on beyond my lifetime. So it was important to me that that foundation was there from the beginning. And that I was able to bring in people that thought the same way and had the same values and wanted to do something impactful with their work as well. So I'll stop there with that's I come from and what I'm rooted in today.
Thank you, Vershawn. Winnie.
I was actually born in North Carolina, Red Clay, and my father was a civil rights photographer in North Carolina, and there was, I don't know, this is a connection we have, but there was a journal that he was a part of called the Red Clay Reader. This is many, many years ago. But anyway, and so I grew up maybe a little bit differently than a lot of white families because I sort of understood from the beginning that, to put it lightly, the playing field is not level. And the importance of standing up and speaking up for what you believe in. So my parents are from Detroit. My father moved to North Carolina where I was born. And then when I was 5 years old, we moved to Chicago. And so I have very few memories of red clay. But that is where I was born. And once I was here, I remember going to kindergarten, and my mother was in the hospital giving birth to my little brother, and I had to take ballet classes. And they were offering ballet classes to little girls instead of gym. That's how old I am, okay? So that's what I did, and that's where I got my first ballet classes, and then I just always managed, I come from a kind of a large family, and my mom was always busy, but I always managed to kind of latch on to somebody who found a ballet class in the neighborhood, and I would tag along. And then I went away to college. I should mention my first professional job was with Ruth Page's Nutcracker, okay, when I was 19. And then when I was 20, I went to Southern Illinois University at Carbondale. I thought I was not going to dance anymore. I was going to go into psychology or something. And of course, while I was there, it found me again. And I was in all of the musical theater departments, the little university dance concert, whatever. I graduated and came back to Chicago, and I got very lucky because I auditioned for the Joseph Holmes Dance Theater, and they took me as an apprentice, and I really felt like that was home. I mean, Joseph was he taught a Graham workshop, and I saw a pleading, and I was like, oh my God, that's me. And so I was lucky. I got to stay with that company for 7 years, and I always had things that I want to express, and I feel like I learned a lot of this from Joseph Holmes and Randy Duncan. And I had always made dances. My little sister and I used to make up dances all the time. So I can't say I always thought I would start my own dance company, but I think I always felt I would start my own dance company, and then I did. And I've kept kind of a combination of that love and need for dance and the need to express myself, and also awareness of social justice and that I'm not the center of the universe, and everybody ought to be given a chance. Everybody deserves to speak. So. Did I answer the question?
You did. I'm going to go a little bit deeper because you skimmed over a significant part of your history, I think, and then we'll come back to that. But Joel, tell us when you started dancing, where you grew up in the city of Chicago, and then how your mentors help you make the transition to the global exposure to dance that you had.
Okay. Well, I was born in Chicago. My mother and father were from Lambert, Mississippi. They moved here, my father moved here in 1948. I was born in 1949. I am 75 gorgeous years old. Thank you. And I grew up in Cabrini Green, which is several blocks away from here. So I'm very used to this neighborhood. I used to hang out across the street at Buckhouse Square with all the gay boys. So those were my friends and my peoples, okay? As well as my family. My family was in this area also. I went to Catholic school first, then I went to about 5 schools on the north side over here, elementary, before I got to high school, which I never got to because I was arrested. But that's cool, because I've always been an activist my whole life. My life is activism. By my existence, I have to be an activist in order to get out of this library and to my car safely. That's my activism. I live activism. I had wonderful teachers here. I started with Nana Scheinflug and the Chicago Moving Company were some of my first teachers. Frances Alice was a ballet teacher down on Randolph, just east of State Street. She had a studio just behind the alley that overlooked the L. So during our classes, we'd have the L going by all the time, and that's why I was taking ballet with her and modern. And she had a wonderful partner that accompanied classes. And I was very, very much an always openly gay person, because that is who I am, and I cannot be anything other than that, and I would not attempt to be, because it wouldn't be true. So I have been fortunate to have had some wonderful, brilliant minds and people that I aspire to. Like, I used to want to be Alvin Ailey. That was my goal, to be Alvin Ailey, because I didn't want to be like him, I wanted to be him. Okay? So I went to the Ailey School. I ended up going to the Ailey School for 2 years, and I got a job working at Zoom Zoom restaurants as a manager in those days. So I was managing a restaurant more than I was taking classes, which ended my butt right back up in here. Okay, because I was not going to be managing these people's restaurants for them and making all this money and not receiving it. How about that? So my company started out of Northeastern Illinois University when I was a student there. And it developed into the Joel Hall Dancers because I was working with the dancers that were in the ensemble at Northeastern. When I left to teach at Nana's studio, which was the Chicago Moving Company, which was located at 218 South Wabash, we were on the 9th floor. Lucante was later on the 5th or 6th floor. Third floor, right? And we were on the 9th floor. Can you remember that? My goodness. That was a long time ago. But, during this time, I got to meet all of these great, great teachers, and I was inspired by great, great influences, mostly of women that were teaching, with the exception of several exceptional men. Keith Allison was one. Keith Alexson was another. Warren Conover was with American Ballet Theater and came to work with us also. So we've had many different influences that brought us to this point, and we're looking forward to another 50,000 years because most people say 50-year legacy. I think that legacy is people. I think our legacy is the people that we work with, that we learn from, that we grow with, that we dance with, that we create an understanding with, and an audience that understands your work or will identify with your work. My main purpose in choreography is identification, because when I see you, I see me. And that is also something that I've gone by that. When I look on the stage, I want to see me. You know what I'm saying? And that was not happening very much when I was growing up, because most of the people that I was studying with were white people. I didn't see black people, other than I knew Joseph, and I knew Alayo of Montreux Dance Theater, and I knew Puni Dobson, and I knew Mario Rico Fuentes. So I knew a lot of those people that were in that history.
So let's talk about that in terms of so disclosure, Winnie and I both danced with Joseph Holmes. We were both apprentices together. And so there were very few companies, diverse companies, putting brown bodies on stage. And so there wasn't that example as a young dancer, you know, where were you getting the inspiration from? We had Alvin Ailey's company in New York, but, you know, very few, and Dance Theater of Harlem, but very few companies here. Now, fast forward, we've got an artistic director who, again, is embodying the African American experience in terms of the work that she's doing. Winifred Haun and dancers, Winnie has been working and giving a home for diverse bodies for decades now. And so we have seen some changes. Going back to, I want you to go back to your root, because you came through the gay rights liberation movement. You saw the ravages of AIDS on our artistic community in New York and Chicago. Can you talk to us about how that informed the structure of the company that you wanted to create?
I think that's a lovely question. I need to dig into that just a little bit. I have, as I mentioned earlier, always been openly gay, so that has never really been an issue in my life. I've never had to choose to be anything other than who I am. So I was involved in the gay liberation movement, actually in the inception of Chicago Gay Liberation. And then I was involved with Third World Gay Revolution here in Chicago, which evolved out of GAA, which happened after gay liberation. So there was the gay liberation movement, there was the Gay Activist Alliance movement, GAA, and then there was the Third World Gay Revolution, which evolved out of those groups because we were not being noticed, or we were not being seen, and we were not being heard. So we had to go and find our own platform by which to speak and tell our truth, because no one was going to listen. In this culture, that's rote, that's given in the American culture, in the world culture, actually, because every place has been cultivated and moved into and moved upon and oppressed upon. The only people that weren't were the Ethiopians, actually, in Africa. They were the only people that were not colonized on this planet. You know what I'm saying? So learning all of these things have taken me into a place of my liberation, how I see myself in the world, and how I see my dancers moving in the world. And when I choose dancers, I choose them for their spirit and who they are, because all of them don't come with all of the accoutrement that you would like to see on stage, or what you think you want to see on stage. And that is all learned, because we learn from our teachers, right? So we have to then evolve to the point that we can put ourselves in the world as a speaker and as a voice. And now to transition that into another generation of dancers or other dance companies in the city is fabulous. It's a wonderful place to be. I'm very, very grateful for being Joel Hall because it's given me the opportunity to be more than I ever anticipated.
Winnie, so you grew up, you mentioned, as the daughter of a civil rights photographer. What she did not mention is that it's the great photographer Vershawn Haun, who was also known for his photography of Martin Luther King Jr. And so I want to just ask, growing up in that household, is that, right, and you already alluded to that you knew that there was inequity. So how did that upbringing shape you as an artist, you as a choreographer, you as an employer of diverse artists?
Oh gosh, I'm not sure where to start because I think and like Sarita often has to remind me of where I came from because it's who I am, and I don't think about, oh yes, that's my dad and he was this great guy, and but I do think there was definitely a transition in my thinking that happened in 2012, 2013. And it's when Trayvon Martin was shot. Do people remember that? By that crazy, goofy guy. And oh, there's Solomon. Yeah, okay. So growing up with this awareness, of course, I always worked with Black people. I was always surrounded by people of color. It didn't seem extraordinary to me. It's just kind of the situations that I always found myself in. But when my daughter was only maybe a year or two younger than Trayvon, and she had boyfriends who were his same age, et cetera. And when that happened, it was like a switch went off, and I thought to myself, awareness of the issue is not getting us anywhere. Me having this brilliant knowledge, whatever, about racism and how it manifests in our society and blah, 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 blah. And I thought, I have to be more proactive here. And I would also like to credit Onye Osuzu and Ayega for this, because they would bring this up regularly at See Chicago Dance things. And I'll be honest in saying when they would bring it up, sometimes I'd be like, oh my God, one more thing I gotta do. But when Trayvon Martin happened, I was like, I'm doing this. And so, in fact, I worked with Solomon Bowser at the time, and he was a 23-year-old graduate from Columbia College, and he said to me, Winnie, in that way that idealistic young people are, and he goes, do you believe in this thing called white privilege? And I said, oh my God, I can't believe you're asking me that. Why? It's not like it's the tooth fairy or something. It's something that's real, But he was kind of asking, do you believe in Santa Claus? And so that started us on a series of conversations over a couple of years. And then we decided to create a work called I Am Not This Body. And he made it about Black bodies. I did a section on women's bodies and also on children's bodies, because at that time we were in the middle of the horrible Trump administration. They were separating children at the border from their families, just heart-wrenching. Okay. So I think what happens, and I don't think I'm unusual in this, I think a lot of artists are like this, but I sort of begin with a passionate feeling and a really strong connection to something that's going on in our world today, and I have to get it outside my body, and for me that means making a dance or connecting with other artists. So that's kind of what I do with that. And I don't think, I sometimes I wish I was a writer or somebody clever or somebody who could do something, a podcaster or whatever it is, but I'm not that. I'm a dancer, so that's what I do.
Vershawn, so talk to me about your transition out of Columbia and then moving to Tisch, and then your decision to start a company.
Hello? Okay. Let me just make sure I heard the question right. So you said my transition from Columbia to Tisch and then starting a company. Okay. So yeah, I will say I graduated from Columbia College in 2002. And, 2002. And it's funny because as I listen to Joel and when he talk about kind of how things were in the field, I still feel like there's still things that are still there and present. What I experienced at Columbia, I was the first BFA graduate from the program. I stayed a year to get the BFA. And for me, it was very, it was important for my journey and my next step to stay and do that additional work, even though I knew, that it was gonna cost more money and all the things. But it was something in me that was like, this is something that you can be able to say is a part of your legacy, right? That you were the first to complete the program. And it was very challenging, to be really transparent, as a Black dancer to make it through that program. Very challenging. There were two individuals that I want to credit who's still my mentor today, Eduardo Villaro and Natalie Rast. Without those two, I would have not have graduated from that program. And so I'm saying that to say that even in my journey through Columbia and even at Tisch, I still felt like the dances and the practices that I was invested in were not centered in academia. And I wanted to be a part of changing that through my company. And so when I think about dances of the African diaspora, I know now how important they are to the American dance canon. But in my training and in my education, that wasn't always lifted up, right? And so a part of my artivism, or a part of my practice, was how do I continue the work of Pearl Primus and Catherine Dunham and those that have brought our practices to the stage and have brought our practices to academia and have centered our experience in their work. That was very important to me. So it was how do I leverage the spaces that I have been very fortunate to be in, to continue to center that in Red Clay and also in the artists that we bring to Red Clay. It is dance, but it is more than that, and it's always always something that I'm looking for as we bring in new artists, is how do you center dance and art making in your life? How does it sit inside of your life trajectory, and not just, I want to dance in a company? To me, it has to have a deeper meaning to be a part of this work. And so. And the other thing I'll share is I started Red Clay, or I started visioning Red Clay right after grad school. I had a chance to travel to Senegal, West Africa. I studied with the choreographer there, Jermaine Uncogni, that had developed her own school as a Black woman in Senegal. A school, a compound, housing. It blew my mind what she was able to accomplish. In a region where it wasn't celebrated for women to study dance. It wasn't supported for women to study and have their own company. So these were kind of anchoring moments for me as I thought about what I wanted Red Clay to be and what I thought the work of Red Clay could be and represent. And I think, again, going back to my where I come from, my mom's community in Plateau, Alabama, was founded by a group of freed slaves or freed Africans from the slave ship Clotilda. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Descendants. But that's my family, that's my lineage, right? And so I grew up as a child going back and seeing a Black community that was self-sufficient. There was a school, there was a post office, there was a church, there were businesses. That wasn't foreign to me, right? It wasn't until I kind of started to grow up here in Chicago, I was like, oh, okay, this is a slightly different configuration, you know? So yeah, I think when I think about the centering of Blackness and the centering of our lived experience, it wasn't new. It didn't feel out of the ordinary to me to make a company that was about that, because that was my family history. That's how I grew up. It wasn't, you know, anything new or out of the ordinary. It wasn't until I started on the journey that I was like, oh, this is going to be something a little bit different, right? And to be able to stand in that, even when there's not necessarily the valuing of those practices off the bat, or there has to be deeper conversation around these are professional practices, and these artists are professionals in their work. So, and you mentioned IEGA, and this work was already happening in Chicago. I had a foundation to build upon. It wasn't you know, something new. I think that was already percolating by the time I came around. So it was something for me to be able to pull from and pull forward into the present for Red Clay, and hopefully into the future as we continue to do this work. Yeah.
Thank you, Vershawn. Joel, you also had a transition that happened when you went to Africa. And I definitely, listening to Vershawn speak about that shift that happened when she saw that self-contained community of a female artist in Africa, and tying that back to her ancestors. When we spoke, you talked to me about how you felt when you were back in Africa, and how you felt tied back to the power of the ancestors. Can you share with us just that moment that you had, that time that you had in Africa, and how that's changing the way you're working right now?
I found out through my DNA that I was from Ghana. So I wanted to experience my people in my heritage, which as an American, I cannot really say I have. But as an African, I can say that I am, and know that I am, and know where I'm from. Most, I feel, African Americans don't have the privilege of ancestry knowing where they're from. Most of us don't know that we're from different parts of Africa, you know, mainly 2 parts of Africa, mainly. But in the diaspora, we're everywhere. And we were everywhere all the time. That's what people don't realize. And my experience was getting off that plane and getting on my knees and kissing the earth. That was my first experience. And when I walked down the escalator, I came down an escalator, and I saw that sign that said Akwaba. And I said, what does that mean? It means welcome. Welcome home. And I went to Accra in Ghana, but I stayed in Cape Coast, which is where Elmina Castle is. And I went through that castle, and that's where my life changed. When I had to go walk through those steps of where my ancestors were before they came to those ships. And being in those rooms and walking through those rooms where they were squished together to be loaded in as cargo into ships, and experiencing their spirits in the rooms was so powerful for me. When I came out of that, there's a place called the Door of No Return, and that's where they shipped you out from. And when you're at the castle, they take you on this tour through where all the slaves were down. The women were over here and the men were over here, and they were all squished together in their own excrement, and so forth and so on. And whatever at that time, I guess it was the Portuguese, perhaps, that were there raping our people and taking us away to someplace that we didn't know. So, in saying all that, I'm good, you know? I really am. I mean, I'm still sane at the moment. But having gone through that experience, it was so profound. And it grounded me so much, because before I went, I wasn't grounded. I mean, I did work, but I wasn't grounded. I had no base other than what I knew, what I learned. And then once you go and you relearn, it's the difference, I call it the education as opposed to the edumacation. The edumacation is the further knowledge, the further study of who you are. And Africa was that turning point for me in knowing me and knowing my power.
So how does that change the kind of work that you want to craft right now?
Well, it didn't change the kind of work, it just made the work, it made me become more conscious of what I was presenting in my work and how it was being seen and what it meant to everyone that was watching it. So it was important to be representing you as opposed to representing something that you thought you knew. Even jazz, to me, was something that I learned through other people. But jazz is something, urban jazz, is something that is whole and is soul. It's from the inside out and not the outside in. So we don't move from the extremities, we move from our back. And we move from our center. You understand? And we think from here. My stomach is my brain. My center is my brain. And everything emanates from that. Okay. So that's how Africa changed my thinking. And it changed the way I feel about people.
So as you're doing this work, Vershawn, as you have rooted now in a center, a physical center, where you can have the community come in and experience your work, your dancers' work, the fact that they are living this professional life in the community, in their art form. how are you continuing to engage with your community to bring them along in this artistry? You know, there has, within the Black community, a lot of times there has been kind of the sort of, I don't want my child doing that, or I want them to have something to fall back on. I don't want them to be an artist for a living. And I'm speaking first person. I came from that kind of family. As I hear both you and Winnie talk about the red clay, I mean, my mother came from Mississippi, my father came from Louisiana. He's a Louisiana Creole. And, you know, that is not what they wanted me to do. They wanted me to have a comfortable, like a good job so I can raise my family. And, you know, dance was okay to do. So now that you have shown the community that this is a possibility, how are you starting to actively engage with the community to bring them in and to have them be a larger part of what you're doing in Red Clay?
I think I'm still showing. I don't know if it's been like a, you know, kind of a light bulb, and I think I have been determined to spend more energy aligning with those that have just a like-mindedness, because I don't think I can change a whole group of people's thinking about this being a career, right? I still think there's going to always be those that are questioning or unsure, and I think at the root of it, what I hear is care. What I hear is a family that cares about you know, their child or whoever being okay. And I think at the root of that, there's nothing, I can't find fault with the parent wanting their child to be able to be self-sufficient. I have a child, right? I'm like, I want you to take care of yourself, you know, and not always need me because I won't always be here. So at the root of it in any conversation, it's around what they aspire is for their child to be okay. The conversation generally is around how open are you to following or being guided by your child's dream, or a young person's dream for themselves. And we, you know, I have a brother that I alluded to sports, and I have a brother that played sports and had a basketball scholarship. And it was so interesting in my household because there was never any concern about, well, he wants to play basketball. Okay, we're going to make that happen. Well, I want to dance. Well, you need a backup plan. I'm like, well, doesn't he need a backup plan? Because everybody's not making it to the NBA, right? And, you know, he's not 6'7". But anyway, so I talk to parents or folks that come in around, you know, that dancers are athletes, right? So if you look at this as an investment in your young person as an athlete, and how can we ensure that there is a career path? Well, you need to buy tickets, you need to donate. Like, there's so many ways that we can make the field a more sustainable field. So then there's not this fear of going into something that is not as solid. How do we as a community, as society, make it solid, right? And so that's kind of a part of the conversation too. And I think when I think about the young people that we work with, it's also teaching them how to advocate, right? So with me, it was, okay, I want to study dance, but I have to figure out a way to not convince, but to show that I'm actively looking for a way to support myself. Like I'm coming to the table with ideas around how I can make this work. And you know, our space on 63rd Street, it's on the street level, so you walk by, you can see the artists in the studio. I'm more of like, I'm gonna prove it by you seeing it. It's gonna go much further than me trying to talk you or convince you into it. So you can see these artists are here Monday through Friday at 9:30. While you're walking to the train to get to your job, they're walking in the door to get to their job. It's no different. So part of it is just showing it and making it visible. And again, I don't think this is new. You know, it's just a strategy to make it more visible to our community that there are individuals that have committed their time and their dollars to training their bodies in this way to do this work, just like any other, you know, athlete. So I think sometimes it's just kind of reframing or repositioning it inside of our community. But a part of that too is also just talking about the history of artists not being paid properly. Like, let's not sugarcoat it. You know what I mean? Like a part of the reason why folks didn't want to go into it is because we weren't actually paying artists what they should have been paid. So let's also have that conversation while we're talking about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Winnie, you have actually started changing the model. You have added a second company to Winifred Haun and Dancers as this addition. So I see it as two, it has a platform for two pipelines. Those that don't go to university programs, that want to bridge their training and make them ready for larger companies. And then those that have come out of university programs and are looking for that next level of real life rep training. So talk to me a little bit about your decision to form Third Coast Contemporary, and then any challenges that you've had in terms of funding two companies. And then the enhancements to the work that you're doing.
I think so. So I never wanted to start a dance school, ever. I like working with kids, but it's the parents that. Okay, well, anyway. That said, and this kind of came out of the tradition of Joseph Holmes. So when I was lucky enough to get accepted as an apprentice, it was training you was a part of that relationship. You were hanging around the company to get better training, and then you also became a part of the culture of the company. You learned the craziness of the artistic director and how you fit into that. And so that's always kind of been in the back of my head, and the idea that we train people, like that is part of the gift, if you will. So the Third Coast kind of came out of, during the pandemic, we were at Maywood Fine Arts. We've had a relationship with them for like the past 6 years, and they give us free rehearsal space, and then we do programming for them. And so we're there because it's really the only place during the pandemic that we can be. And they had a few teenagers hanging around with nothing to do. Remember how much fun that was? And so I said, since we're here and you're giving us the space, just send them, because I was a mother of teens too. And okay, so a couple of them came and they just kind of hung out and they took company class with us and they were in rehearsal. And then because I'm a mom, I would see them sitting around. I'd be like, you get up, learn this, and we're doing a flash mob in a couple of weeks. Get over here, maybe you can do this. And then they just started doing it. I call it like pushing them off the deep end. Just go. I don't know how you do this. Just go. And it worked out really well. Like they maybe because they didn't have anything else better to do, but one of them is now dancing for Deeply Rooted. So it works, I guess, And so I thought, why don't we, without starting a dance studio, why don't we do something like this? And so that's one reason why I chose to work with kind of 17, 18-year-olds and up. And that is essentially what they do. They come and take class with us and rehearse with us. And if people are standing around, I will choreograph on you if I see you standing there. And so, yeah, so that's...
Okay, well, we are coming to the close of our time together. I know, which is, this needed to be 2 hours at least. But I want to get, starting with Vershawn, Winnie, and then Joel, just some last words of that you want to direct to our audience about what you want them to focus on, pay attention to, a project that you're doing. I know, Winnie, you're going to be at Dance for Life, but Vershawn.
So many things I want people to pay attention to. Yeah, I don't think there's a specific project that I'll mention. Again, I think this conversation has been around or centered around legacy. And so if I think about legacy and focus for me is building and continuing to sustain a really strong institution in these very, I would say continues to be. I heard you all talking about like, there's no challenges, it's always great. And you think 50 years later, it's gonna eventually be smooth sailing. So I think I'm already in the fact where this is the work. This is the work that I've been compelled to do. And so I think my legacy, I'm thinking about how do I grow and support the next generation of those that are gonna come to be an artistic director, to be an executive director, to be whatever is gonna need to be put in place for Red Clay to continue to grow. That's where my focus is now. Not so much on and obviously the artistic work that we leave behind. And so I'm hoping, as I'm sure everyone else, you want to make it a little bit easier for the next group, and a little bit easier for the next group, and a little more funding, and a little more donors, and more ticket buyers, and more and more and more. That's what I'm thinking about. How do I put systems in place to continue to grow that? And so that this art form that we all love continues to be all that it can be, because I still don't think we've reached that yet. Right? We haven't reached that yet. The power that a language of the body has to change and sustain our lives, we haven't even scratched the surface. And so to think about all those that came before and the work now and those are to come, that's what I'm continuing to be curious, continue to think about ways that you can plug in, whatever that looks like. That's what I'm thinking about. That's what continues to fuel me and keep me motivated in this way.
Thank you, Vershawn.
What was the question? It's hard to follow Vershawn. She's so intellectual, and I'm just like, I just do what I do. Okay, well, we're going to be in Dance for Life on August 10th. Very happy about that. Thank you. And then I'm also going to plug our other show that we're doing on October 18th at the Studebaker Theater. So I'm going to premiere new work for that. And if I'm going to leave with a thought, I've been talking with young people about this. We did a really nice dance residency last November, and we worked with a lot of college students. And I think that, one, you should just keep going and do what you want to do with you know what I'm saying? Like, don't try to fit yourself into a mold. And I was talking with a young artist just yesterday, and she was like, she wasn't sure how to go. She's only 18. How to go into, and I was like, and she's like, I feel like writing. And then I was like, then write. Just write. Who knows what it's going to become? Will you become a writer? Who knows? Will you be a dance journalist? Who cares? Just write. And if you want to go take a bunch of dance classes, go do that. And just do it. Just be active, follow your heart, and see where it leads you. You can't connect the dots going forward. You can only connect the dots going back. And so that's what I would say. Oh, sorry.
And Joel.
Okay, again. I have two things that I'd like to point out. First of all, my artistic director, William Gill, is sitting right here. Okay, and next to William is Merrick Mitchell, who is a former member, or actually still a member, indirectly of our company and is now on our board of directors. Thirdly, my husband, who is sitting in the back row. We're celebrating our 27th anniversary of being together, but we were married in Hawaii first because they were the first people that passed the law. And then we married, we were, what do they call them, civil unions? Yeah, we had a civil union here, and then we transferred that into a marriage here. So we've been married 2 times. We're gonna do a 3rd time too. Okay? Yeah, I enjoy them, they're cute. Okay? But you know, with with this kind of support, I feel my company is in a really good place and left in good hands with good people that know what our mission is and what our hopes and aspirations are to be able to pay all of my dancers for their work, for their rehearsals, takes money. And a lot of times people don't want to give me money. You know what I'm saying? It's like an afterthought. Oh, okay, give Joel some money. You know, because I've been around too long. And when you're old school, people want to act like you're old. But I'm quite young, really. The other thing that I'd like to say is that, very important for everybody in this room, is anyone familiar with 2025? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. If you're not, Google it and read it. Just the opening is striking, but read it. Because you may not think that it affects you, but wait if it happens. I say if, because if it doesn't happen, we're good. If it does happen, everybody in this room better be watching out. And I'm serious, okay? Think of yourself and the importance of who you are. Don't let these people walk away with our stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's like somebody come to your house and you got something on your table, and then all of a sudden you go there and it's not there. Somebody walked out with your stuff. Now, I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but it's happened to me, okay? And I'll tell you that it can happen to this country. It can happen to the world if it happens here. So it's not only us that's at stake. It's the world that is at stake. Okay? This is a very important message that I'm trying to give you people. So please, let's get this right. And encourage others that you know to do it right. Because we have one opportunity, just one, with all this shit, the stuff that's going on with our current president, and he's having a very complicated time, I know, but you know what? I'd take that any day over the alternative. And the only alternative really is Kamala Harris. Can we talk? Okay? Now, I know y'all people, a lot of people are scared of black people. You know why they're scared? Because we have so much power. We emanate power. When we walk with power. That's who we are. It's natural. That is a natural thing. It isn't anything that we try to be, it's who we are. And we cannot help it. I can't. Okay, I'm going to walk in my power, honey. And I will, if I possibly can, I will hand it on to anybody that will receive that and take that power that they have and use that power to build power. Because the only way that we can survive is through our own power. We don't need no dictator here telling us, taking our stuff. First of all, there won't be any banks. He's going to take all the money. So you better get your money if you want to have it. Okay? Now, I am a conspiracy advocate. I am, seriously. I really, everything that comes up, is a conspiracy theory behind it, for me. Because I've lived in this world and I know how these people act. And I know their capabilities, and I know I have experienced the power of what they can do when they're angry and when they're evil and when they're nasty, nasty people. We have them. So let's avoid that. That's my...
I want to thank everyone for coming today. I know we were supposed to have a Q&A. If you all have time and you would like to ask any questions of our panelists, I will open the room.
And I can walk around with this microphone if people have questions.
I know somebody got...
But while you're thinking, I do want to thank deeply the Chicago Dance History Project, Sean and Michael, for recording this. So this very important conversation is going to be part of the history of Chicago dance and widely available. So thank you again. Is there anybody here who's got a question? Christine, hang on so that it shows up in the tape. I want you to talk into the mic.
I just have 3 questions, one for each legend. Vershawn, you said you worked with Jowley from Urban Bushwomen? I'm sorry, say it again. You said, did you work with Jowley in Urban Bushwomen?
I did not dance with the company, no. I studied with them, though, when I was at Tisch.
Okay, so I have a private question after this. And then Winifred, did you ever, your father who photographed iconic civil rights leaders, did you ever see any of these leaders in your home or nearby, or did you ever get to interact with any of these iconic civil rights leaders by way of your dad?
Oh, I was a young child, and my dad was actually really young too. My parents were only 22 when they started having us. So he was actually really young when he was, and it made a huge impression on him. I never met. I mean, I might have, but I didn't. You know, it was my dad's job, and so yeah. I mean, I remember when Martin Luther King got shot. I think I was like 6 years old or something like that, and our house was crazy busy, and there were people everywhere, and the phone was ringing off the hook, and I was actually kind of mad because it was hard to get attention, and I had no idea, and I remember my mom sitting down and telling me like what was happening, who was shot, why it was so important, etc. So, but that's the closest I can say that I came to the actual events. So yeah.
Okay.
But I did grow up surrounded by those photos, so yeah.
My last question, I want to make sure I heard correctly, Joel. Did you say that you got arrested before you got to high school? Wow, okay, that was all I wanted to know. I just wanted to make sure I heard that.
Yes, I did. I spent 4 years in the Illinois Youth Commission doing time for running away from home. How about that? Now, Well, yeah, look at me now, but what I'm concerned about is these young brothers and sisters out here right now, because they're being taken down in the hood. You know what I'm saying? Everybody is vulnerable. Okay? Don't, and I just don't want to see us continue to repeat that cycle of taking people, our people and your people and all of our people down, because it's frightening. And what I'm saying about 25, don't fuck it up. Okay? Please don't. Because, again, this is serious stuff. These people are not playing. They are not playing. And if they tell you that they're going to do this, believe them. This man said he's going to execute people and stuff. You know, who's next after that group? Think about it. I'm done.
Well, that's a good note. Activism, artivism, art, dance, and social justice. That's what it's all about, right? Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please support our 3 dance companies up here: Joe Hall Dancers, Winifred Haun Dancers, and Red Clay Dance Company. Thank you so much.